Imagine falling, not from a building, not from a plane, falling through water, through darkness, through pressure so extreme that every bone in your body would splinter like dry wood. You fall for 4 hours, and when you finally hit the bottom, you are in a place more remote than the surface of the moon, more alien than the deserts of Mars, a place where no sunlight has ever reached, where the weight of an entire ocean presses down on everything with the force of 8 tons per square inch. A place that, until 60 years ago, no human had ever seen. This is the Mariana Trench, and what they found down there will change the way you think about life, about Earth, and about what we have done to the most remote place on this planet. Stay with me, because this goes deeper than you think.
In the western Pacific Ocean, roughly 200 miles southwest of the island of Guam, the ocean floor does something extraordinary. It tears open. The Mariana Trench is a crescent-shaped scar carved into the Earth's crust, 1,580 miles long, stretching nearly the length of the United States. But it's not the length that matters, it's what's at the bottom. At its deepest point, a location called Challenger Deep, the ocean floor plunges to 36,037 feet, nearly 11 kilometers straight down. Now, numbers like that are hard to picture, so let's make it real. If you took Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on Earth, and dropped it into the Mariana Trench, its summit would still be submerged under more than 2 kilometers of ocean. If you stacked 25 Empire State Buildings on top of each other, that tower still wouldn't reach the surface. The Mariana Trench is not just the deepest point in the ocean, it is the lowest point on the entire surface of the Earth, a geological wound so deep it has its own name, its own history, and its own ecosystem, one that science is only beginning to understand. But before we go down there, we need to understand why it exists at all.
Beneath your feet right now, the Earth is moving. Massive slabs of rock, called tectonic plates, drift across the planet's surface so slowly you'll never feel it. But over millions of years, they travel thousands of miles. In the western Pacific, 2 of these plates have been on a collision course for 170 million years. The Pacific Plate, one of the largest on Earth, moving steadily westward, and the smaller Mariana Plate sitting relatively still. When they meet, something violent happens. The Pacific Plate is old, and old oceanic crust is cold. Cold rock is dense. Dense rock sinks. So instead of stopping, the Pacific Plate dives beneath the Mariana Plate, sliding down into the Earth's mantle in a process called subduction. Right at the point where this diving begins, where the Pacific Plate tears itself away from the seafloor, the ocean floor rips open, and that rip is the Mariana Trench. The Pacific Plate here is 170 million years old. It was already ancient when the first dinosaurs walked, and now it is slowly, unstoppably being pulled back into the planet that created it, carving the deepest scar on Earth as it goes. The Mariana Trench is not just a geographical feature, it is a window into geological time. And for most of history, humans had absolutely no idea what lived inside it.
Before we talk about what lives there, you need to understand what it would feel like to be there. The pressure at the bottom of Challenger Deep is over 1,000 times greater than at the surface. That is 15,750 pounds of force pressing on every single square inch of your body. It is the equivalent of 50 jumbo jets stacked on top of you. every second from every direction. At that pressure, the air in your lungs would compress to nothing in milliseconds. Your bones would not break, they would shatter before your nervous system could even register the pain. The temperature hovers between 34 and 39 degrees Fahrenheit, just barely above freezing, cold enough to steal heat from anything that exists down there. And the darkness. Sunlight can barely penetrate 1,000 feet of water. The Challenger Deep is 36 times deeper than that. Not a single photon of sunlight has ever reached the bottom. It is a darkness so complete it has no equivalent on the surface of Earth. A darkness that has existed unchanged since before the dinosaurs. For over a century, scientists looked at these conditions and concluded nothing could live here. The Mariana Trench was surely a dead zone, a sterile abyss. They were wrong, spectacularly, profoundly wrong. But before we get to the life they found, someone had to get down there first, and that story is its own kind of madness. January 23, 1960. Two men climb into a steel sphere barely 7 feet across. They seal the hatch. The ocean closes over them. U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh and Swiss engineer Jacques Piccard are about to attempt something no human has ever done. Descend to the deepest point on Earth in a vessel called the Bathyscaphe Trieste. The descent takes 4 hours and 47 minutes. At 30,000 feet, they hear a crack so loud it shakes the entire vessel. One of the outer windows has fractured under the pressure. They are 6 miles below the surface, in a damaged vessel, in total darkness. They keep descending. At 1:06 in the afternoon, the Trieste touches the ocean floor. Depth 35,800 feet. Temperature inside the cabin just above freezing. They have 20 minutes before they must begin the ascent. And then, through the tiny viewport, they see something moving. Piccard describes it as a flatfish, about a foot long, slowly gliding across the sea floor. Then shrimp-like creatures, drifting in the darkness. The bottom of the Mariana Trench was not empty. There was life here. In the most inhospitable place on Earth, something was alive. The Trieste had no cameras, no sample equipment. When Walsh and Piccard surfaced and reported a flatfish at 36,000 feet, some scientists refused to believe them. But one thing was undeniable. Humans could reach the bottom. The question was, who would go back? The answer was no one, not for 52 years. The Trieste had done the impossible, and then nothing. No follow-up dives. The most extraordinary place on Earth was visited once for 20 minutes and then abandoned. Why? Because the Trieste was expensive, produced almost no usable science, and the only evidence of life was 2 eyewitness accounts the scientific community couldn't verify. The U.S. Navy scrapped the program. Focus shifted to unmanned robotic vehicles. Cameras went down. Scientists got glimpses, but no human eye saw the bottom of the Challenger Deep again. For 52 years, the first and only manned visit to the deepest point on Earth remained a single brief moment, frozen in 1960. A historical footnote, a question mark, until a filmmaker decided he wasn't satisfied with that. March 26, 2012. James Cameron, director of Titanic and Avatar, squeezes into a vertical torpedo-shaped submersible called the Deep Sea Challenger and begins his descent into the abyss. This time, the mission is completely different. He brings cameras, sampling equipment, lights.
the technology to actually study what's down there, not just survive the visit. The descent takes 2 hours and 36 minutes. Cameron sits alone in a sphere so cramped he cannot fully extend his arms, watching through a 9.5-inch thick viewport as darkness swallows everything above him. When he reaches the bottom, he becomes the third human being in history to see it, the first to do it alone. What did he find? He described it as lunar, desolate, a flat plain of fine gray sediment, translucent amphipods drifting silently near the floor, no fish, no obvious abundance of life. He described it as complete isolation from all of humanity, like being the last person in a universe that had never heard of people. But what he brought back told a very different story. Sediment samples revealed 68 new species, most of them bacteria. Cameras captured microbial mats clinging to chemically altered rocks, evidence of chemosynthesis, life fueled not by sunlight, but by chemical reactions in the Earth's crust itself. Cameron planned to spend 6 hours on the bottom. A hydraulic leak cut his mission to 3. The trench had shown him glimpses, but refused to give up its full secrets. For that, the world would have to wait for a man with a custom-built submarine and a mission to map every deep trench on Earth.
May 2019. Victor Vescovo, former U.S. Navy officer and extreme explorer, pilots the limiting factor to the bottom of Challenger Deep. Depth reached 35,853 feet, the deepest dive ever recorded in human history. But Vescovo doesn't stop at one dive. He goes back, and again, and again. He becomes the first person to dive to the Challenger Deep multiple times, spending hours systematically mapping a place that had previously received less than 4 combined hours of human attention across 60 years. He finds 4 new species of amphipods, vibrantly colored rocky outcrops, active geological processes still happening at the bottom of the trench in the dark, 7 miles below anyone's attention. Sea cucumbers crawling across sediment, ecosystems no human had ever witnessed. Since 2019, the limiting factor has made over 20 crewed dives to the Challenger Deep. And then Vescovo found something that should not have been there. Lying on the sea floor, at the deepest point on the planet, a plastic bag, candy wrappers. His team collected specimens and sent them to labs. Scientists examined the tissue of every animal they found. Every single one contained microplastics in their bodies. Plastic thrown away on the surface, possibly decades ago, had filtered down through 7 miles of ocean and been consumed by creatures living at the deepest point on Earth. If pollution had reached the Challenger Deep, there was nowhere left that remained untouched. So what actually lives in the Mariana Trench? Let's start with the deepest fish ever discovered, the Mariana snailfish, found in 2017 at a depth of 26,830 feet. Translucent, almost ghostly. No hard bones. Its skeleton is soft cartilage that bends instead of breaking under the pressure. No swim bladder. It is the absolute depth limit for vertebrate life on Earth. Below it, no fish can survive. Then there are the supergiant amphipods. In most oceans, amphipods grow to half an inch. In the Mariana Trench, they grow to 7 inches. And scientists discovered something even stranger.
These creatures use aluminum to strengthen their exoskeletons, extracting it from the sediments around them. They are the first known species in the history of biology to incorporate aluminum into their bodies, a biochemical trick found nowhere else in nature. The Dumbo octopus, named for its ear-like fins, is the deepest known octopus on Earth. Unlike its shallow water cousins, it has no ink sac. It doesn't need one. At these depths, there are so few predators, the octopus has simply evolved the defense mechanism away. There are xenophyrophores, single-celled organisms that grow to several inches across, visible to the naked eye, living 7 miles below the surface. Sea cucumbers, polychaete worms, bacteria and archaea with biochemistry so alien that scientists are still working to understand it. Life in the Mariana Trench isn't just surviving the conditions, it has made those conditions its home.
In 2021, a Chinese submersible called the Fendu-G, meaning striver, conducted 33 dives into the Mariana Trench as part of the largest deep-sea research project ever attempted there. What they found rewrote the textbooks. Over 1,600 sediment samples, analysis revealing more than 7,000 new microbial species, thriving populations, not rare isolated organisms, at depths reaching 36,000 feet. 89% of these species had never been seen by science before. But the most astonishing discovery came at 31,270 feet. Massive colonies of tube worms and bivalves, thousands of organisms clustered together. Tube worms up to 12 inches long, swaying in deep currents like an underwater forest. Fields of clams packed so densely they carpeted the sediment like cobblestones. These were chemosynthetic communities, entire ecosystems powered not by sunlight, but by methane and chemicals seeping through cracks in the seafloor. The Earth's own internal chemistry, feeding a world that sunlight has never touched. The researchers called it a river of life flowing along the trench floor, the deepest chemosynthesis-based ecosystem ever discovered on Earth. Think about what this means. For most of history, scientists believed all life depended directly or indirectly on the sun. The Mariana Trench says otherwise. Life here found a completely different engine. Not the star at the center of our solar system, the planet beneath their feet. And if life can do that here, where else might it be doing the same? In other ocean trenches? In the frozen oceans of Jupiter's moon Europa? Beneath the surface of Mars? The Mariana Trench is not just a record, it is a question, and the answer changes everything. In the 1990s, NOAA dropped hydrophones, underwater microphones, into the deep Pacific to listen, to record whatever sounds existed in the deepest parts of the ocean. In 1997, they picked up something strange, an ultra-low frequency sound rising in pitch over about a minute before fading. So loud it was detected by hydrophones separated by thousands of miles, louder than any sound any known animal on Earth has ever produced. Scientists called it the Bloop. For years it remained unexplained, and in that gap between what science knew and what it didn't, imaginations ran wild. Was it biological? Something impossibly large moving in the deep? In 2012, NOAA concluded the most likely explanation was ice quakes, the fracturing and movement of massive icebergs. Natural, geological. But the deep ocean is still producing sounds that take years to explain. Unidentified signals, unexplained patterns, in a place we have barely explored,
the question of what else might be moving in the dark remains genuinely, unsettlingly open.
So here is what we actually know about the Mariana Trench. It is the deepest place on Earth, a geological wound 170 million years in the making. It is a place where every condition tells you nothing should survive, and it is absolutely teeming with life. Creatures with aluminum in their skeletons, fish with cartilage bones that bend instead of break, single-celled organisms the size of your palm, entire ecosystems powered not by sunlight but by the chemistry of the earth itself. 3 humans have seen it with their own eyes. More people have walked on the moon than have visited the bottom of the Mariana Trench. And every single expedition found our trash. Plastic bags, candy wrappers, microplastics in the bodies of animals living at the deepest point on the planet. The Mariana Trench has taught us 2 things simultaneously. First, life is more resilient and more creative than we ever imagined. It does not need sunlight. It does not need warmth. Given even the harshest conditions imaginable, life finds a way. Second, there is nowhere left on this planet that is beyond our reach. No ocean deep enough, no place remote enough, no ecosystem isolated enough to escape what we put into the environment. The deepest point on Earth is a thriving alien world, and we are already there, whether we went or not. Which haunts you more, the life thriving in conditions that should make survival impossible, or the plastic bag lying at the bottom of the world? Tell me in the comments. And if this is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe to Unseen Species, because we are just getting started.